Welcome. My name is Allie Kay, and you are watching my alpaca paint along today. If you're new here, I especially want to say welcome. I do these live paint alongs every Monday at 5 Eastern, and these are totally free to watch. And if you would like to jump in the fun and paint along with us, you can download the outlines on my website. So I'm going to put the link in the comments, but you can also just go to my website, and it's pretty easy to find, alliekstudio.com, and Allie is just spelled A-L-I. So welcome to everybody who's jumping in. I see a whole bunch of you all jumping in to watch today. Thrilled to have you all here. Last week I took a week off. I was skiing with my family, so I'm excited to be back with you this week doing this painting of the alpaca. It was a photo that my friend Gretchen submitted, and I just loved it. I thought it was so cute. This is the fourth painting in our farm animals series, and we will have one more next week. We're gonna paint a duck. And that will be the last one in the series, and then we're going to move on to flowers. Hi everybody, hi Kelly and Brenda and Paula. Thank you guys for saying hi. Hi Judy and Chris. I'm just so happy you guys are all here. So if you, if you're new, I do post these as a replay. So if you're painting with me and you feel like you wanna slow down and paint at your own pace later, you can just watch. And you can watch the replay later. It'll be right here on my Facebook page under the videos tab. And I also post those on Tuesdays to my YouTube channel, so you can find those as well. Hi Teresa and Letitia and Dawn. So many of you guys jump in every week, and I love seeing it. So as I mentioned, we have an outline download. So that gives you a template to trace that puts the outlines on your panel. This is an 8x10 wood panel, and when you trace the template, you either need to put a sheet of transfer paper down, or you could just color the back of your panel to get the outlines on there as well. And then what I did is I painted over these outlines using a little skinny script liner brush. It's really nice for outlining. I'll show you what that looks like. And I just mixed up a light purple that I made from white, Payne's gray, and alizarin crimson. And I should mention, I am using golden fluid acrylics for this. So if you download the outlines, you get a full list of all the paint colors that I'm using. But I don't want you guys to feel like that is a reason why you couldn't paint this if you don't have the exact colors, because I think you can work with what you have and make an amazing painting. Let's see, Jacqueline says, when you paint the outlines, do you add water? I do, Jacqueline. It just kind of helps the paint to flow. So yeah, I do water it down. It just makes it pretty easy to get those lines in. So yeah, great question. Thanks for asking. And if anyone else has questions, I am about to get started, but I do check back periodically, and I try to keep up with your questions. We have a little bit of a delay in the question feed, so sometimes it takes me a minute or so, but I try to answer all your questions, and I love when you guys ask them. So let's get started painting this cute little alpaca. And you know, I didn't name this one, so I might need some help from you guys while we're working here. Give me some ideas for some names for this one. That would be lovely. We painted Fancy the pig last week, and that was a ton of fun. All right, I need to just do a little adjusting of my camera, so you have to bear with me. I try to get the best camera angle, and I'd love for you guys to actually see my palette if possible. I'm gonna keep trying to adjust. I wanna have our lighting pretty good, and hopefully you can see some of my paint there too. Let's see, that looks pretty decent. I think you guys can see what I've got here, some of my mixing station. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we're gonna get started here painting the alpaca. Oh, somebody says Daisy, I like that. Hi Christine, welcome. All right, so the first step that I do pretty much when I paint just about any painting is after I get my outlines on, I like to start mapping out the shadows. And so I am going to do that using a purple that I will make from alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. That makes kind of a nice sort of dirty purple. And I water my paints down in these early layers. So I'm going to make a nice little puddle of this Payne's gray and alizarin crimson. It's just kind of a nice neutral, but if you don't have these colors, you could make just about any purple and maybe dull it out with a little bit of brown. These early stages really don't matter very much. And I'm trying out some new brushes. These are Dick Blick Essentials Flat. And I'm pretty excited about these. I got like a 10 or 12 pack of them. And they were really reasonable. Like I think the 10 pack was maybe 10, 12 bucks. And so far so good. They're holding up pretty nicely. I just got them, but I like them. And I got those from Jerry's Artorama. All right, so I'm looking for the shadows. So I see that the top of the head is very bright. So the area behind it is going to be darker. So I'm going to start washing in the area behind this little alpaca, and that will make the top of the head pop out as being an area of highlight. So I'm just kind of comparing on each side of my line to see which is the light side and which is the dark side, and I'm putting this wash in to represent that. Now, right here, you'll notice it flips. It's dark on the edge of the alpaca and it's light behind it. So I'm going to switch to my other side of the line and put that in as dark. And it kind of comes down there as dark. We'll put a little bit of that in. And then again, we've got a highlight on the nose and it switches and it's bright behind it. So paying attention to those little shifts is really what makes your piece feel really natural and like it's interacting with the environment. And then we'll just continue going down here. So at the nostril, it's dark again. So I'm going to fill that nostril in dark. And then of course it's real dark inside this nostril. We're going to go back and push that a little bit darker, but I'm just finding it for right now. And the edge of the nose here is darker than the other side of it, so I'm just catching that. Got a dark shadow coming down here, and that, by washing this area in dark, it's making this highlight show up. And just continuing down, so it's dark underneath here. And if you're just popping in, I am using alizarin crimson and Payne's gray for this wash. Now I look and it's dark underneath the mouth, so I'm gonna drop down here and put a dark shadow in. He's got like a cute little smile. I think that's why I like this one so much. Okay, and then continuing down, we've got some dark here. Now the bottom of the chin is darker than the background, so I'm gonna just actually wash all that in. And then I have a bright highlight coming down the edge here. Oops, I just started filling it in. So I'm going to wash in the background behind it to push that area brighter. I'm just gonna kind of dissolve that out. I'm not worried about that. I just wanted to catch it right at the edge. And then on the other side of that highlight, I'm going to wash it in, which will leave us that window for the highlight. So this stage of the game is very much like watercolor painting. I am not a watercolor painter. I've done it a little bit. It's not really my favorite, but a lot of what we're doing right here is where we're saving our highlights. That's basically what you do when you're watercolor painting. Then I like to layer a whole bunch of stuff on top of it. Okay, I'm just putting in some little shadows here to give some texture to the wool or fur. Okay, and then I'm gonna pop up here to the eye, and I see the eye is all pretty dark. I did draw in some little indications of some reflections in the eye, but for right now I'm just gonna push that dark so I can see it pretty well. And then we've got a dark shadow here, another dark shadow underneath that kind of bright pink eyelid. And then this is a chunk of hair that's a highlight, so we've got a shadow underneath it. And I'd love for you guys to say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. I forgot to mention that. Oh, it's fleece. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, I don't have my farm terms. I should really be better about this. But yeah, say hi. Tell everybody where you are in the world. I know we have people all over the place, which is very cool and exciting, and I love seeing it. Okay, moving on. Just looking at my shapes. I'm going to jump right over here, and I know it's darker behind this edge of highlight, so I'm going to wash that in. Oops. You see how I don't really just stay in one area for very long? I like to kind of jump all around and just get it all in there. It just helps me to stay loose, to not get hung up on the details in this stage, because we don't want to do that. We want to just keep moving. We're just trying to get the overall effect of the piece. Hi, Patty in Texas. Thank you for joining us and saying hi. Okay, looking up at the ear here, we have this bright highlight on the top, and then it gets dark underneath. So I'm going to wash that in. I'm going to continue that highlight, or finding the edge of the highlight, I should say, because then that makes that look bright up at the top. And this guy is starting to kind of take shape. It's this early shape finding that gives me a really good roadmap, so that when I'm layering in the next stages, I can be really loose with my brush strokes because I know where everything is. I don't have to guess about it, because in this stage, I'm being very particular about where I'm putting these shapes down. I'm looking very closely at my reference image and comparing those outlines to see, are these outlines tracing a shadow or are they tracing a highlight? Kind of going back and forth. And we're also not looking at colors right now. So I'm just looking at value. I'm not looking at tone. And that's another way to, work quickly and stay loose, is I'm not thinking about, well, what colors are all these things? I'm just looking at what's lighter and what's darker. That's the only thing I'm worried about. And we're getting pretty far along here. I'm actually just going to make that whole ear pretty dark in there. We'll separate some areas of that later. Okay, I think I've got at least a little bit of an indication of a wash around most of my lines, just kind of showing what's what. And now I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to find the areas that are the very darkest, and I'm going to push those a little bit darker. So I'm actually going to switch down to just a tiny bit smaller brush. I'm using a 2 right now, but it's a pretty big 2. Hi Sharon in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Welcome. Actually, that was a 3 I was using. Okay. I'm going to switch down to my 1 because I want to get some of these details like in the eyes and the nostril where it's really dark. I'm going to go in and find those because that'll help us. So I'm going to use the same 2 colors, the alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. Just making sure you guys can see what I'm doing on my palette here. Okay, so now we don't really want any water in here. We want this to be pretty thick paint. I'm still working in the same puddle, but I want it to be pretty opaque because this is pretty dark here. And I'm gonna zoom in on my image. This is why I love working from a tablet, because you can just narrow right in on what you're working on and it helps you to see it so much better. I just wanna make sure you guys can see everything here. I'm gonna zoom up just a little bit. I think that's better. Sometimes Facebook Live crops these down a little bit more than what I'm seeing the video as, and I wanna make sure you guys get everything. Okay, so this dark, we're gonna put in the center here. That's about it, because we've got the lashes going over it. So I think that's really all I needed to put in there right now. I'm gonna zoom back out and I'm gonna go over to the nose and look at the shape of that nostril. And I'm going to drop that dark tone in. I've already got it nicely outlined, so it's pretty easy for me to find. Now I'm going to offload my brush just a little bit so it's not quite as dark, and I think I'm going to put in the shadow here by the mouth. Maybe I'll add a bit more water just to thin that out a little bit, because this shadow under the mouth isn't quite as dark as the nostril. So we'll just try putting that in. Yeah, that's kind of a mid-tone shadow. Got a little bit right here, and then this nostril is in shadow. And I'm looking around, where else do I see it that dark? I don't know if I see it that dark anywhere else right now. Maybe just a little bit right here. Okay, I'm gonna zoom back out. Now I'm gonna add just a little bit more water. So I don't want this to be quite as dark as these areas, but it's gonna be a little bit darker than that first wash. And I'm just going to look for a few more of the darker shadows. So I said I was gonna come back to the ear here and kind of pull out where I see it a little bit darker. There's a darker shape there inside the ear. A little bit right there. And I'm seeing some kind of dark shadows up here. Well, that's a little bit too dark. I'm gonna pull a little bit of that off. It doesn't really matter too much, but I'm just looking for those, you know, not the very darkest, but places that are a little bit darker than that first wash, just to kind of give it another level of depth. And then once we're done with this, then we're going to go in and do a complementary color underpainting wash. So we're getting pretty close here. I'm gonna push the background a little bit darker. So sometimes a trick to make something appear lighter, like if I want this white to really glow, the trick is to put the area right next to it, the background, and push that area darker. Like I see right here, it's really bright, and then I wanna make it really dark behind it, and that makes that really bright area really pop out. So that's a little secret where you can kind of control your areas of focus in your painting. These new brushes are kind of noisy. All right, how you guys doing? Anybody have any questions? Oh, also tell me if you're painting with me. I would love to see that. Drop in the comments, let me know if you are working on this Alpaca live, and then of course, if you are watching this as a replay, I still wanna know if you are painting right along, because I love it. I'm always proud of you guys, and if you are painting this with me, make sure you post it in my student group. It's called Allie's Paint Friends. It's specifically for people who watch these paint-alongs and want to share what they did and see what everybody else did. So that's a free group that you can find here on my Facebook page. And everybody is so nice and so encouraging in that group, and I just love seeing everything that you guys do every week. It's like the highlight of my week, seeing all of your work and all your cute farm animals that we've been doing lately. All right, I think that's enough. I think that's enough shading to put in for right now. So now we're gonna do our complementary color underpainting. We want to make sure that this is totally dry. So if you've got some places that are still kind of wet, you might want to just blot those. That's what I'm doing here because we don't want that to pull off when we do our next layer of paint. Let's see, Jennifer's painting with me. Pat says too fast, I'll watch then paint. Hey, that works too, Pat. I totally understand, but I'm glad you're still joining me live, and I look forward to seeing your painting that you do afterwards. Okay, so now let's talk about complementary color underpainting. Complementary color underpainting means opposite on the color wheel, but I don't always do the true opposite. So let's think about the background color. It's kind of like greens and peaches, I guess. It's kind of a strange neutral because it's kind of both. But overall, it's very warm. So I think for my background color, I'm going to pick a cool color to wash in. And one of my favorite cool colors to use in as an underpainting is Phthalo Blue Green shade by Golden. So I'm going to use this, and this paint is super intensely strong. You hardly need any of it, and it really has a lot of color to it. So I'm going to just grab a tiny bit of it and a lot of water because I just want to tint my panel here. And I'm just gonna wash right over the shadows that I put down. And I'm not gonna be worried about if I'm overlapping the alpaca. I'm gonna be really loose with this wash because we want everything to be loose. So we start with a loose underpainting. So again, this is just Phthalo Blue Green shade. And the areas that I want the background a little bit darker, I might put this blue down a little bit heavier in those places. And then the places where I know my background is going to be lighter, like up at the top, then I might put my wash down a little bit lighter in those places. And I have this paint so watered down that it's actually gonna fall down the canvas a little bit and probably lighten up, but I think that'll be fine. Oh, looking at your comments here, I gotta look here. Let's see, Kelly said, if the background is warm, why did you choose a cool color? Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking, Kelly. So when I do a complementary color underpainting, the reason is when we layer the opposite color on top, it makes that color appear even more vivid and powerful when it's contrasted underneath by its opposite. So that is one of the reasons, but another reason is just plain because it's fun. And I think if you look at some of my paintings and you follow along with me here and see how this turns out, you'll start to kind of understand why I choose to do that. But it's also just kind of personal preference. But this is a technique that artists have been using for a long time. I'm not the first one to start doing it, but I do probably err on the side of a brighter underpainting than what a lot of people might choose. So, okay, we got our blue underpainting. Now let's talk about the alpaca. So the alpaca is, I'm gonna basically call it like pink. It's got a lot of peaches and browns, and then we've got some purple reflection here on the side, but I'm gonna generalize and call the whole thing pink. And pink is also a pretty warm color. So we're going to still continue with a complementary color. So I have to think about it. I don't really want to do the whole thing with the same complementary color. I don't think I want to do the blue, but I do want to do a pretty cool color. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a wash of, let's see, what do I want to do? I really didn't think about this one. I'm kind of leaning towards green, but I'm just not sure about the green. You know, I think I'm going to push my magenta as a cool. Now, reds you often think of as warm, but I'm going to use quinacridone magenta, which is a cool red. So there is some flexibility. You don't have to say like all reds are warm, you know, all blues and greens are cool. We can call this magenta a cool color. And so I'm going to use it because I like it. So we're just gonna wash the alpaca in with some magenta, and then we'll start layering our colors on top of that. So it's not always about being true opposite, but it is about thinking warm versus cool. All right, moving along, just watering this down with water. I will use glaze later, but right now I'm just using water. And I think the area around the eye and the mouth, I'm going to adjust my underpainting a little bit because that is going to be basically like a pink color. And so I don't want my underpainting to be quite so close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch and make that area around the eye and the area around the mouth, I'm going to put purple in there. So it's pretty close to the magenta, but I just want to shift it a little bit. So we'll just keep washing in. I gotta wash this in real light at the top. I gotta spread that out a little more because it's the painting is very bright at the top. Checking out your comments. Sorry if I missed any, guys. I'm just scrolling through here. Hi, Elena. Glad you made it. All right. Now, like I said, I'm going to switch to purple. So I like Permanent Violet Dark by Golden. It's a really beautiful purple. I use it a lot for underpaintings. So we're going to wash that in with the purple, or we're going to wash this area in with that purple. Yeah, it got pretty messy there, but that's okay. All right, and then we will start putting the frosting on this baby, and it's gonna start coming alive. Right now we're just kind of making a big old mess, but I promise it's gonna be okay. Okay, there we go. We've got our underpainting in there. And now if I'm working on this in the studio on my own, I might step away from this for a few minutes and just let it dry. But since this is a 1-hour demo and we wanna just kind of keep the show going, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting some color in the background because my blue is dry, I know it is. And by the time that I finish putting color in the background, I'll be able to start layering in the alpaca over this wet wash that I just put down. So I've got a pretty big brush here now. I'm using a number 6 because I want to have some pretty fat strokes in the background. I don't want it to be like little tiny blotches. Hi Janine, thank you for joining me in Michigan. All right, so let's talk about background color. It's kind of like this peach color at the top, like I mentioned. So I'm just gonna call that a peach. So I'm going to use white and Pyrrole Red Light. I love Pyrrole Red Light. It's one of my favorites from Golden because it's a very nice warm red. So you can do a lot with that. So if I'm gonna mix that with a little bit of white, that's pretty much already gonna give me kind of a nice peach color, but I'm just gonna drop a tiny bit of yellow in there too. Make it a little bit more orangey. I think that's a nice color. And now I'm going to switch and start using glaze instead of water. So I am using Liquitex matte medium, but I'm not picky about glaze, guys. You can use whatever you have on hand. I just prefer a matte finish because I don't really like a gloss finish. And so this is gonna thin the paint out and it's going to allow little bits of that underpainting to poke through. I'll put a little more white in there. So I'm going to just start putting some color in here, and this color looks really pretty nice with the blue, but we've got a lot of different colors really in the background. There's like some little bits of green and some of the peach. So I'm just gonna drop a little bit of this in, and then we might shift and put some other tones in there too. But notice how I'm changing the direction of my brush strokes, and I'm leaving little bits of that blue underpainting poking through. And the trick is to not do this too mechanically. You don't want to have like this pattern of one brush stroke this way, one this way. You really want it to be random. And that is easier said than done, because our brains have this tendency to want to like make it all perfect. So basically all I can say is practice gets you there with that. I'm going to put a little bit here to start chipping away at the shape of the nose there. All right. And I think I'm going to I'm going to put a few underneath here, maybe a couple there along the edge, but it gets darker in the background here, so I don't want to put this bright tone in there. And the background over here is a little bit darker too. So most of these bright tones are going to be up at the top. So now let's talk about that darker background. This is kind of like a warm olive green. It's pretty light, but we'll make that olive green. Since we've got a little bit of this blue out already, I'm going to just barely touch it, and I'm going to use a bunch of yellow. So a little bit of that phthalo blue. I'm using Hansa Yellow Opaque. And now I'm going to put some of that alizarin crimson in there. If you don't have alizarin crimson, you could also use burnt umber or brown. I need to do a little bit more of that blue. So this is going to make us a nice olive green tone. And I'm going to mix a little bit of glaze in there to thin it out. But whenever I make greens, like natural looking greens, I always say err on the side of less green, more brown. Let's see, Kyra's asking, do you seal your painting once it's finished? Yes, I do. I use Modern Masters Master Clear Supreme, and I like a satin finish. This is my favorite. It's good stuff. It's designed more like for murals and wall finishes, but I use it on my art and it works great. Okay, so let's take this dark color and put some of this into the background. Again, we're still leaving little bits of that blue, and it's pretty dark over here. Sorry, my panel keeps moving, guys. I should probably like clamp it. So I get so aggressive with painting, I make my whole panel move. Okay, so the very darkest areas are right at the edges here of the alpaca, and then it gets a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white to it, kind of brown it out, just a little bit more. So now this is kind of like a warm brown tone. I'm gonna put a little bit more glaze in there. And I'm offloading my brush and going back and just grabbing a little tip of it. And then I'm just going to keep going and kind of work it towards those lighter areas. But again, still leaving bits of that background color. So this is kind of like grounding the animal, right? Because it's darker at the bottom, and then up towards the top it's going to be lighter because that's more of like the atmosphere coming through there. We want to be careful not to cover up all this fun blue we put down. Woo! Painting almost moved. All right. So let's stop with the background for now right there. Well, I'm going to put a little drop of it in right here. And let's start putting some color on the animal. I take that back. I forgot, I want to cover up this dark purple up towards the top. Let's use the same color and start covering up some of that dark. Because that's not part of the animal, that's the background. I kind of forgot about that. I'm going to put a little more white in there to help it to flow a little bit more with the color we've got going. I find that sometimes these neutral colors are actually the trickiest to determine when you're mixing colors. It's like, it's easy to mix a color that you know is like blue or green, but sometimes when it's kind of this in between, our eyes kind of play tricks on us. So some of that is just really practice. That's about my best advice with that. All right. Okay, now I'm feeling pretty good about the background. Now let's go in and start working on this alpaca. So let's find this bright highlight first, because that's just like screaming at me, and it's the bright highlight along the edge here. And I think when we put that in, that's going to give the animal a lot of form. So it's just about completely white, but it's not perfectly white. So we don't want to start with straight white. We're actually going to make it is like a warm white. So I'm going to go with peach, and I'm actually just going to use that same puddle of peach that I was using before, except I'm going to add more white to it. So again, I made this peach using Pyrrole Red Light and Hansa Yellow Opaque and white. So I'm just going back in, putting more white in there. And I made sure to clean my brush off really well, because if I had the tiniest bit of this background color on my brush, it would have like destroyed my color. So you want to make sure your brush is nice and clean. And I'm going to start finding this shape. And again, don't forget to leave little bits of that underpainting. Force yourself to. It's so tempting to cover it all up, but I promise you, you're going to wish that you had some of it. So less is more right now. Just leave as much as you can showing through and just put a little bit of this color down. And I'm still using this number 6 brush. You might want to switch down. I'm finding it a little bit tricky to get in here, but I'm managing. But you might want to switch to a slightly smaller brush. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay, I've got some on the edge of the nose here. Looks like it comes down a little here. Now this bright color, we have a little wisp of it underneath the mouth, along the edge. I'm not doing like a straight line. See, I'm doing like some little spaces between my strokes, because we don't want it to be like a perfect stripe along the edge of the animal, because that wouldn't be very realistic. All right, let's see. Patty says, how do you keep the paint from drying on your palette? I guess because they paint fast. But I really like these palettes, because you see how I'm only putting my fresh color in these little compartments. So the paint will stay totally wet in these little compartments for hours. And then in the larger areas where I'm mixing, I mean, it stays relatively wet, but I do have to end up going back and mixing more of it. But one thing I notice when I have students come to the studio here is a lot of times they are afraid to mix up enough paint. So they mix like these very small little compartments of paint, and so then that dries really fast. So maybe the answer is just to mix up a little bit more paint when you're working, and maybe that will help. Okay. Now I'm going to take this color and put it in the background, because I see some pretty nice bright highlights in the background. I want to drop some of that in. It's always kind of fun to integrate the foreground with the background, just kind of like fusing it all together. Plus I already have it on my brush, so, you know, saving time. Okay. All right, so we got this nice edge. Now we need to start kind of putting some of the in-between colors. I'm going to switch my brush down a little bit. I'm going to go down to this 4. And I'm going to start looking for some of the highlights of texture in the fur. And it's not going to be as bright as this highlight. It's going to be definitely darker, but it will be brighter than this purple tone that we've already laid down. Let's see. Cindy said, is there a set of paints you would recommend? Cindy, if you go to my website, you will find a link right on the home page that says get my list of my favorite paints. So you can download the list of all the paints that I use over and over again, but I only buy golden paints. So I buy golden fluid acrylics. There's about 8 or 10 paints that I buy. So yeah, you can find that list there. And my website is allykstudio.com. All right, so let's go in and start making that fur color. Now I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to use some Burnt Umber Light, which is a my go-to brown. I'm gonna use a little bit of that. And I need a clean spot on my palette, and a little bit of white. And that actually makes a pretty nice neutral a lot of the time. But I think I want to cool it down just a pinch. So I'm going to add the tiniest little speck of phthalo blue. Ah, it was already too much. That's not gonna work. That phthalo blue is so intense. So now I'm adding a little more brown and white to it to knock it back, because that phthalo blue just kind of took over on me. So I have burnt umber light, a tiny bit of phthalo blue. I probably shouldn't have even put it in, and white. And I'm gonna add a little bit of glaze. And I'm just gonna start building up some texture here. Not too much on my brush. And this color is actually not that important. We just need it to be like kind of a nice neutral. It's really in shadow. It might be a bit too dark. I'm gonna add a little more white to it. Okay, let's try that. So, moving on, we've got these little highlights. Now, something I want you guys to be very careful of is that you're not making all these little clumps of fleece here all the same shape. Again, that's easy to do, where you just start moving and pretty soon you have like this very rigid pattern of texture on the animal. We want this to be random. Okay, moving along. So I'm thinking about the direction that the hair is going, or the fleece is going. And I'm kind of chipping away at the outlines that I've put in, because I don't really want those to show up, but I'm also making sure that I leave those little bits of that pink underpainting. There's a lot of texture going on here, and I'm going to kind of simplify because we don't need to do every little shape. So I'm actually going to start laying my brush strokes down a little bit fatter here, just to start moving along. So one way to simplify is to kind of squint your eyes and look at the shapes that come out at you as most important. Thanks, Teresa. Yes, I called it fleece. Okay, I'm gonna mix up a little bit more. I'm gonna use more of that burnt umber light and a little more white. I'm not gonna put the blue in this time. I kind of wish I didn't put it in before. So probably should have just gone with the burnt umber light and white. All right, moving along. And now I made it a little bit darker, but that's okay. All right. Start filling it in. Okay. You want to leave those areas that you marked as shadow because we were trying to indicate, obviously, where the shadows are. We don't want to lose that. Okay. So, yeah, feeling pretty good about that. Starting to come along here. And this is kind of the stage of the painting that I call the ugly teenager stage, where we're kind of like in between the original colors we put down and what we're going for. And during that phase of transition, it gets ugly. So bear with me. If you feel like yours is ugly, it's okay. We're gonna get through this ugly teenager stage together, guys, and we're gonna make something beautiful. I promise. It's happened before. Okay, So you'll notice I left this area because I'm seeing this as more of like a purple here. And I'm also leaving kind of the top of the nose, and wrapping around, I see more of like a cool tone coming through. So I am going to add a little bit of Payne's Gray into my mixture. So I'm gonna make this more blue. So now we've got burnt umber, Payne's Gray, and white. Add a little bit more Payne's Gray to make more of a grayed out blue tone. And we're gonna put some of that on the top of the nose. Hi Adrian. Oh, sorry you're late. Well, I know that you'll get right to it. You'll be painting up a storm tomorrow. All right, so this is blue and it's darker. But by putting this in dark, it's gonna make the highlight on that nose really jump out. So I'm not worried about that one bit. Dropping in this dark. So it's amazing how you think of this animal as like white, but look at all the dark colors that we're using to paint it in. And I promise that they're actually there. That can be one thing that people get into trouble with, is that they are afraid to put dark colors in when they're painting something that they think of as white. But anything that's white could have very dark tones in it. It just all depends on the lighting. Okay. Let's see, where else do we need any of these little dark blue tones? Maybe that's it for right now. We need to put a blue highlight in there. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna drop a little bit where the lashes are just to start giving us some idea that the lashes are gonna be there. I'm gonna brighten those lashes up later, but I just wanna give that some form. Okay. Let's find the pink that is the skin around the eye here, and we're also gonna have some in the ear and around the mouth. So let's find that color. And we're going to make that pink using, we're gonna use our same Pyrrole red and white mixture, but we're not going to put any yellow in it now. So it's just gonna be Pyrrole red and white and a little bit of glaze to thin it out. And I switched down to my little #1 brush because I want to get in there and do this. Okay, and I'm gonna steady my finger on the edge here because I want to just put this in only where it belongs, not anywhere else. And I'm just finding that highlight on the lid. It's not going to go all the way around though, or not perfectly anyways. I'm just catching the brightest areas. And there we go. I think, whoop, that's came in a little too far. Okay, I think that's it for this tone. Then I'm gonna look around and see where else I can put this tone. I'm gonna drop a little bit in the ear up here. Now in the ear, it's looking a little bit more magenta, but I'm just gonna use this color up there for right now. Okay, and then I've got a little bit, I'm gonna offload my brush so that I don't have so much paint on it. I'm gonna put a little bit on the little smile here. I'm gonna use this for a thin little highlight around the bottom. And the highlight around the nostril is not quite so bright, so I'm actually gonna go in and just grab a little bit of alizarin crimson to tone this color down. And then I'm going to put that around the nostril. There we go. Now that doesn't show up too well, but it kind of does. We're gonna have to put some darker tones around the nostril for this highlight to show up, but it's getting there. Okay, and now that I have this darker tone, I'm gonna add a little bit more alizarin crimson to it, and I'm gonna put some of the dark tone around the eye. A little bit more alizarin. Okay, because we've got like a dark shadow there, some dark right there. We've got some dark underneath that lid that we can drop in. And then we've got some dark in the ear here that I'm gonna use this darker red for. We'll drop that in. And looking to see, if I want to put any of this in the fur. I don't think so. Well, maybe I'll put a little bit right here because I'm missing a dark shadow there. A little bit right there. And a little bit down on the mouth. I said I was done, but now I'm not. Okay, now I'm gonna add more alizarin to it and put the rest of the mouth in. So this mixture has mostly alizarin crimson and white and a little bit of the pyrrole red light. So I'm gonna drop that in to these nostrils. Oop, I got a little carried away. I gotta blot that. There we go. Okay. Bad habit, I put my paintbrush in my mouth. Anybody else do that? I'm sure you all do. Okay. There we go. All right. This is coming along. I think we need to put these bright blue highlights on the lashes and some of the fur because that's just gonna make it look really pretty, and I really want to start making it look pretty. I'm done with this ugly teenager stage. So we're gonna make that bright blue highlight using white and phthalo blue, the same color that we used in the background, the phthalo blue green shade. And this is always fun to add little pops of this color really in any painting. It's just my go-to. Okay, so I'm just gonna very lightly, I might even need a smaller brush. I'm just gonna very lightly add these little lashes. Try not to do too much or try not to do them too perfect. But I think that's kind of fun. And then we've got some highlight on the nose here with this color, some of the fur. I'm gonna add a little more white in while I'm doing the fur. Okay, and dropping around with some more fur. I'm not really trying to put these in the exact same clumps anymore. Maybe if I was not doing this as a demo, I might be a little bit more specific about this, but I feel like I just wanna kind of get these shapes in, get some of this color in here. Okay, we've got some reflection in the eye that's more of a blue, so I'm gonna take some more of that blue and put kind of a real bright blue reflection in the eye there, just to start giving it a little sparkle. And then maybe I'll go back and add a little more white and drop an extra little zing of it. Ah, that was too much in there. We gotta get rid of that because that's gonna look like a cartoon. Take that out. We don't want it to look like the Alpaca cartoon. We want it to feel real. So just do the tiniest little bit there. That's better. Okay, now I'm going to go back, add a little more white, but now I want to tone this down a little. I don't want this to just be blue. So I'm going to put a little bit of purple in there. Just going to neutralize it just a little bit. And I'm going to, there we go, I like that. This is kind of more of like a periwinkle color here. It's kind of fun. Yeah, let's put some of this along the edge here. Put a little bit right here. I like that. All right. Let's see, Janine says, does the gesso go on the sides of the panel too? Nah, you don't need to do that, Janine. Not necessary. Looking at our time here. Oh my goodness, we're getting close to the end. You guys, I'm afraid I'm gonna go a little bit over. I don't usually do this, but I really wanna keep going on this one a little bit more and get it closer to being finished. So I'm just kind of squinting, looking at my piece. I feel like feel like I need some more kind of texture around the eye that's going to be more of like a warm brown. So I'm going to take my burnt umber light, a little bit of that pyrrole red light, and some white. I'm gonna make a warm brown with that. And we need to go a little bit brighter, a little more white. So again, this is burnt umber light, pyrrole red light, and white. And this is gonna maybe cover up some of that blue. I maybe got a little carried away with my blue. There, that's probably better. All these curls. I should be good at painting curls. I've done plenty of self-portraits when I was in college. We had to do a lot, and I always like hated painting my curly hair because it was so much work. Add a little more white to it, make that pop out a little bit more. Okay. Now I want to warm it up even a little more. I'm going to add a little bit more pyrrole red, and now I'm going to add a speck of the Hansa Yellow Opaque too. So this is going to be more of like an orangey tone, and I think that'll look really nice. Maybe that's the color I've been waiting for. Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna do a little bit more pyrrole red, a little bit more Hansa Yellow. I want it to be just a little bit warmer still. Yeah, that looks good. That's the color I'm seeing. That's what we were looking for. Sometimes you just gotta keep going until you find it. But yeah, we were missing this kind of nice warm texture of fur. We had a lot of cool. That's why we needed this. That's what we needed. The missing link. So again, this has the pyrrole red, Hansa Yellow, and white, and I probably still have a little bit of burnt umber in there. If you're working on making your own. Let's see, put some texture there. Probably put a little of this color in the background too, but not quite yet. I want to get a little further on my alpaca here. We have some of this color up at the top too as it meets that bright highlight. We're seeing some of that. So sometimes like white is one of the trickier colors to paint because there is so much color really going on in it. But I'm proud of you guys for doing this with me. But there is a lot going on in a white painting. All right. That helped. Now let's drop in that purple that I mentioned over here. I'm going to go to a slightly larger brush, and I'm going to make that purpley kind of gray tone using my permanent dark violet and some white. Let's see, where's my white? There it is. It's a little dirty, but it's okay. So this is permanent dark violet and white. And I don't know, maybe I want to just put some of this in first. I'm going to put a little glaze in there. Let's just drop some of that in. I want this to be pretty dark, and I think I'll build it up dark first, and then I might add a little highlight. But I kind of like that. I'm going to put some of this in the ear too. I see it up there. Okay, now I think I see a little of this over on the nose over here, and a little bit by the eye here. We're really having fun with colors. So this is just the permanent dark violet and white. Yeah, I like that. It's bringing out some of those shadows that we're kind of missing. Okay. Now I want to put some brighter pops of pink around the eye. I mentioned that before, how the eye is a little bit more of like a magenta pink. So I'm going to go into my magenta and white, and I need some clean white. My white's all dirty, so I'm just going to go to a new spot, put some new white on there, and put a little detail around the eye with some of this magenta. So I'm going to get kind of tight here, drop a little bit of it in there. I see some of it up here that I want some of that magenta. And this is kind of mirroring the tones that we put down in our underpainting. So bringing some of the background into the foreground is always good for a painting. Let's put a few little pops of it on the texture of the fleece too. I see little bits of it coming through. Okay. I keep like kind of backing up, taking a peek at what I've done, if I want to change anything. I want to pull out the brightest white highlights. So we started with that white, but it wasn't totally white, right? Now I want to go in with pretty much straight white. Just looking at my time here, we're not doing terrible. Okay, so we're going to go with just straight white, and we're going to dance that around in the very brightest areas. So that's going to make the rest of it actually look a little bit darker because it's going to be contrasted by that bright white. We don't want to get too carried away, but it is really pretty bright along the edge here. And then we've got pretty bright section here along the nose. It's kind of like that light is dancing around the nose. Coming in here underneath. Gotta steady my hand to get it in there. Okay. And little dashes. Now I feel like I want some more of that blue mixing in. No, I don't. I changed my mind. I was gonna say I wanted to put some blue dancing around here, but I don't really see anything like that, so I'm not going to. I'm gonna try a different blue highlight on some of the fur. So I'm going to go in with my white. I'm gonna just barely touch my phthalo blue. Then I'm also going to put a little bit of the permanent dark violet. Remember we had kind of that periwinkle blue? I'm going to put a little bit more of that into my fur here. Put a little bit of glaze in there. Because I see kind of some brighter little highlights coming down here. Now that we made this area brighter, the rest of it feels darker. So it's kind of that push and pull, right? If we make one area brighter, then we might need to make another area brighter. Otherwise, it feels too dark. Put a couple little dashes of texture there. Okay, some of the texture I want to put in down here, I need to make this a little darker. So I'm adding a little bit more of my permanent dark violet into this mixture here, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of texture in here. There's a lot of texture going on in this painting. It's all right though, it's all good. It's kind of like a alpaca party. All right. Okay, so I'm getting close to being finished here, at least for this demo of the alpaca. I think I want to just add a little bit more pizzazz in the background. So I want to add a few like more brighter pops of kind of a orangey tone. And then we're gonna wrap this baby up because I'm already over on my time at 6:07. Okay, so that orangey tone that we're going to put in the background. Oh, I'm looking at your questions here. Chris says, have to go to bed. It's after 11, oh boy. So yep, sorry about that, but I hope that you will come back and finish it up. And yeah, this is gonna be available as a replay, guys. So if you don't get through the whole thing right now, you can always go back to the video later. Okay, let's put in that bright kind of orangey color in the background. I'm going to do that with some pyrrole red, a little bit of Hansa yellow opaque, and a little bit of burnt umber to tone it down. Burnt umber light, a little bit of white, and a little bit of glaze. So that is pyrrole red light, Hansa yellow opaque, burnt umber light, and some glaze. Put a little more white in there. And that's gonna give us this kind of just warm little pop in the background that I wanna drop in. You see just kind of some of this tone reflecting. It's gonna look pretty with the blues. Ooh. I'm like laying them down so hard. All right. Okay, I think that's enough of that color. A couple more bright pops at the top and then we're done, I promise. Okay, we need a little more white. We're gonna make a bright, bright yellowy orange at the top. So it's gonna be white, Hansa yellow, pyrrole red light. And we're just gonna pop that color in up at the top. It's gonna be mostly white, just for some pretty sparkle up there. Because this animal's kind of backlit. So the background is actually brighter than the animal, and that's why the fur is catching a lot of the highlight, not fur, I'm sorry, the fleece is catching the highlights. Okay. I like that. There we go. All right, we're gonna call it done. I didn't go over too badly. I'll let you guys take a peek at our friend the alpaca here. It's pretty busy, there's a lot going on. I may go into it and maybe I'll take out a little bit of the extra texture here. I don't know, I'm gonna have to sit on it for a bit. Sometimes I have to think about it for a while. But hey guys, thank you so much for watching this demo. I would love if you have enjoyed this, please, please, please hit that share button and share it with your friends. It helps me out so much, and that way I get to find a lot of new painting friends that enjoy these painting demos. So thank you again. If you are interested in full online classes, you can find those on my website, allykstudio.com. I have several full online classes which are very different from this. They are very kind of slow-paced and structured. This is just a little sample of my teaching, but I hope you guys will join me next week for the duck. That will be the last of our farm animal series. And again, if you painted this alpaca with me, please share your painting in my group, Allie's Paint Friends. I would love to see it, and I know everyone else in the group would like to see it too. So I'll see you guys next week, and have a good night. Happy painting.